this episode of Proof, does ESP exist? Researchers have struggled for years to determine whether extrasensory perception, or ESP, is an inexplicable phenomenon of the mind or a shameless hoax. After poring over decades of controversial footage, we may have found our answer, but it's up to you to decide. ESP, or a sixth sense, is the link between the world we're able to perceive with our five senses and another realm where the supernatural is perfectly normal. But our desire to unlock the mysteries of the universe also makes us vulnerable to deception. Everyone wants to know what's on the other side and whether they have the power to access it. In our pursuit of the truth, we're left with a single question. Is ESP and a sixth sense a window into unknown worlds or our own invention? Our obsession with star readers and fortune tellers dates back centuries, but none know that better than the men and women who make their living as psychic mediums today. Theirs is a profession shrouded in mystery and doubt, but not everyone is a skeptic. John Holland, author, public speaker, and self-described psychic medium, Holland discusses ESP. He believes that we are all gifted with one of these three types of extrasensory perception: clairsentience, or the ability to feel spiritual energy; clairvoyance, or the ability to see spiritual energy; and clairaudience, or the ability to hear things from the other side. But ESP isn't just a talent reserved for those with a large following speaking to a packed auditorium. As John himself believes, if ESP is real, there are average people walking among us with this gift. It's difficult to prove their ESP in any meaningful, empirical way. What about a type of ESP that may be easier to prove, though? Something where accuracy is more quantifiable, more black and white. One man named Robert, or Trebor7, as he's known on YouTube, decided to test his own psychic abilities using a deck of Zener cards. Now, this isn't a magic deck. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Designed in the 1930s by perceptual psychologist Carl Zener, these cards are used exclusively to test for ESP. Instead of spades, diamonds, hearts, and clubs, the face of a Zener card will show one of 5 different symbols: a hollow circle, a plus sign, 3 vertical wavy lines, a hollow square, or a hollow 5-pointed star. In an ESP test, the experimenter draws a single card without showing the test subject, and the test subject must guess the symbol on the card. In this video, Robert draws a card and attempts to match it without looking to its mate in the cards that are displayed for the camera. As you can see, Robert is not always correct, but he continues to move through the cards as he senses the shapes and the pile they should be placed in. This time he's correct, so to limit the possibility of Robert seeing the cards in any way, he ups the ante and blindfolds himself while finishing the remainder of the deck. Using only his intuition to guide him, he continues to match the symbols on the Zener cards he pulls to the ones set up in front of the camera. But does he see enough of the symbols correctly to indicate ESP? Now, if these cards were picked by random chance, the average would be to get 20% correct with no psychic ability whatsoever. But astoundingly, Robert gets 24 out of 35, or almost 70% of the Zener card's symbols correct, meaning he passes the test accuracy 3 times that of random guesses. Of course, this isn't a conclusive test, and a self-submitted video isn't exactly irrefutable. It's important to keep in mind, though, that clairvoyance, by its very nature, is difficult to prove. And this test isn't the final word on the matter. Coming up next on Proof. Feats of mentalism are one thing, but can we take ESP into the physical world? Feats of mentalism are interesting, but what if man could actually move physical objects using only his mind? Telekinesis, or the ability to move and manipulate objects with the mind, might seem like a superpower reserved for comic book heroes. But for some who claim to possess this form of ESP, it's second nature. When exerted with laser-like focus, telekinetic energy can supposedly move mountains or warp even the most durable of materials. A person in full control of their telekinesis could, in theory, influence matter on a subatomic, atomic, and even universal level. Telekinesis is the epitome of mind over matter, but scientific evidence of its existence remains elusive. During the Cold War, Russian housewife Nina claimed to possess telekinesis, baffling scientists of the day by performing acts like those seen here. In this film taken by Soviet authorities, Kulagina spins a compass with a wave of her hand and changes the pull of magnets. In a separate unrecorded session, scientists later reported that Kulagina was able to stop a frog's beating heart using only the intense focus of her thoughts. But that was 50 years ago. Is there any evidence of telekinesis today? And what about someone who claims to be able to show their ability in broad daylight and in front of a professional camera crew? Mentalist Sean McNamara has dedicated himself to honing his telekinetic abilities after struggling with physical ailments for years. He believes he's finally gotten to the point where he can use energy to manipulate objects. In this clip, Sean demonstrates with a few light bulbs the basic difference between physical and metaphysical phenomena. He tosses a few light bulbs on the ground to show how easily they break. Sean then attempts to toss a light bulb on the ground without breaking it by transferring his chi energy into it. He gathers himself, focuses on the bulb, and something changes. Unbelievably, the bulb bounces back at Sean instead of breaking when it hits the ground. But what was different? Sean claims that when he focuses intently on creating a protective shield around the bulb, it bounces. Can Sean actually move something using just his mind? The piece of tin foil is placed under glass and is balanced on the head of a pin. The glass is so no wind can affect the foil. Sean will try to move the foil using only his mind.
So when I took my exploration of energy outside of my body and into the outer world, I wanted to see if I could move an object out there. But I really wanted to make sure I wasn't fooling myself. So I chose a piece of tinfoil balanced on a needle, but I chose to put a glass container over it because I didn't want to think that maybe I was blowing on it or the wind in the room was moving it. And I also didn't want to accidentally move it by heating up the air inside the container by touching the glass.
Without touching the glass, Sean meditates on the foil as he performs deep breathing exercises. Watch what happens. The foil begins to move. Sean adjusts, and the foil moves in the opposite direction. To make things more difficult, Sean places 3 different types of metals in the glass container: gold, copper, and silver. Each metal has a different weight and can be affected differently by his energy. He stands a foot away, and remarkably, each metal object moves independently of the others.
And we can either change our world by becoming more loving people and more connected people, or we can continue damaging the world by believing that we're separate, that we're disconnected, and that nothing really matters.